Today we're going to be talking about 5 tips and how these can help make your image much more cinematic. Welcome back guys, it's Byron Phillips from ByronPhillipsMedia.com, and today we are going to be talking about 5 tips that will help make your images more cinematic. Now I want to get this out the way. These are not tips that are going to be saying for you to buy a gimbal or to get the best camera. In my experience, those things are the sprinkles on the cake, and they are things that should be used later, after you've had a basic understanding and a good concept, or at least a good grasp of the things, the fundamentals. So we're going to start with the first tip, and that is selecting the appropriate frame rate. This is 24 frames per second. It is a natural, a nice, pleasing image. Now, if we were to shoot this at 30 and play back at 30, or 60 and play back at 60, it's hyper smooth. It is in a natural element to it, and it doesn't sit right with us, and we can instantly see that, and that is going to take us out of the experience, and that is what we are trying not to do as content creators and cinematographers. We are trying to make everything where the user or the viewer does not notice what we've done. That is the biggest compliment. The biggest compliment is, I didn't notice, which means you've done your job, because they're more focused on what they are seeing, the story they're involved in. What they're not going is, does that look right to you? Because that pulls you out of the experience. So the first tip is to use the appropriate frame rate. If you're going for slow motion, then use a higher frame rate. Conform it back down to 24 frames per second. Do those things, but don't laden your images with slow motion. The talking head parts, make it 24. It's always pleasing, and it's the right frame rate to use, and that's how you can pepper your video with different shooting styles. So you can have talking head parts and slow motion parts, but use the appropriate one so that it's not detracting. When we watch slow mo, we know it's slow motion, so it's not pulling it out. But when we when we're watching a talking head shot and then it's shot in 30, it almost feels like video, and you can see that. And unless that is the stylistic approach you're going for, it's going to pull the user out of that experience. So that would be the first tip, is use the appropriate frame rate. So for the next tip, we are going to be talking about lighting, and I think that this is something that I didn't focus on early enough. I was more concerned about getting a gimbal. I was more concerned about getting all the little gadgets to make the camera better, and I didn't need to. I should have been focusing my attention on how to light properly. Am I exposing the image correctly? And once I'm exposing the image correctly, does it fit in with the style? And if it's not fitting in with the style, how do I achieve that? How do I control the light in order to fit the story or the image that I'm going for? And a lot of that is contrast ratios. Do you want it to be high key, low key? There's a lot to lighting that you need to invest your time in to understand and learn. So like for instance, now this is a Panasonic G7. It is not the greatest camera in the world, and it will never be the greatest camera in the world. But it doesn't care either, because it has a dynamic range. Am I, as a cinematographer, lighting to the camera's capabilities? Because if I'm not, then I'm not doing my job. And that is the fundamentals. Just because you have a piece of equipment, can you light for it? Can you give the camera the right amount of exposure and the right amount of control to make it the best image? If your answer is no, then that's where you should be learning, and that's where I'm learning. Spending an awful lot of time trying to learn about lighting, and it is a very slow process. There are a lot of mistakes. Like today, it's a simple scene. I've got negative fill. I've just got the one key light, which is up at a 45-degree angle, and I've tried to replicate the Rembrandt lighting. I didn't get it right, but I've learned a lot in the meantime, and you have to be willing to learn to share with your mistakes. So learn lighting. It's gonna take you so far. It'll take you 90% the way there if you can get the image lit right. So for my third tip, this is going to be sound. Now, one of the biggest, I'm going to say the biggest because I said the biggest mistake was with the lighting, but I also feel that the sound that I was producing, not with my voice, but I was capturing with the equipment, was very subpar. And I didn't realize just how important sound was to the overall image. So even though I've just said that using light and exposing it will get you 90% the way there, that's great as far as the image is concerned. The emotional impact sound has on an image can affect it equally as much. So if you don't have the right backtrack or the right ambient noises, then it directly affects how the user or the viewer is watching your content. For instance, I've got a shotgun mic. I've had to invest in that. Now, I'm not saying you go out and you buy the best shotgun mics. That is not what I'm saying. But you need to be very mindful with the level of quality that you are getting with your audio. A user will sit through badly exposed image. They will forgive, people will forgive it. I've watched through it. But as soon as someone does a lighting tutorial and the audio is tinny and echoey and it's just been an afterthought, then I instantly navigate away, because there has to be that care and attention, and you have to learn how to edit that in post. Again, something I'm learning all the time. I'm making mistakes. The last video, I made a mistake with the audio, but I couldn't go back and reshoot it. I placed the actual equipment too close to the mic, and I had electrical interference coming through that audio. Dumbass mistake, but you make it. But the important thing is that I knew enough to kind of get rid of 80 to 90% of that in post. So I was lucky. But that's only because I spent the time learning about sound. And just like lighting, it is something you've got to invest in, and it's all time. So for tip 4, we are going to be using composition. Now, composition is a way of directing the viewer's eyes to where you want them to be. It is a way to make the image much more visually pleasing. It is a way to anchor the person's gaze at a particular area. And all those three are achieved with composition. So using things like leading lines to direct your gaze to a main part of the image. It is how you use composition to replicate what you want the user to feel. So if you want them to look in a certain area and you want them to feel a certain way, good composition helps massively. In conjunction with the lighting and the sound, it can make for a very impactful image. Now, today I am talking to you, giving my tips, so I have gone for a very central image. There's no distracting with any other elements in the frame. It's just a simple background, and I'm talking to you guys, and I'm just giving you my tips. So the composition is, and the intent, that I want to talk to you on a one-to-one level. I don't want to be off to the side. I don't want to be anywhere else in the frame, but directly talking to you. And that is the composition that I've gone for. Now, you might have situations where you have two characters. If they are on equal footing, then you would place them perhaps on the left and the right hand side of the frame, or however the story dictates. Now, if one has more important dialogue, then you would perhaps want to make them the largest part of the frame, so that the user or the viewer is focused in that area. But it's not just about characters in the screen, it's about architecture, how the objects and the props are laid out in the frame. Is there anything that's distracting the viewer over here when they should be looking over there? So composition plays a large part. It's not just where you point the camera, it's what you have in the scene that allows you to direct the user or the viewer's gaze. So practice composition, learn the art of directing where that person is supposed to look and how visually pleasing it is to them, because clutter on screen and bad composition will ruin an image. It doesn't matter even if you've nailed the lighting. I can tell you now, my mother could be watching the most amazing porn film, but if there's curtains that she likes over in the corner, she's going to look at the curtains. Curtains don't need to be there. It's badly composed. There might be nice curtains, but you get the point. Not that my mother would be watching porn, so sorry, mum. So the last tip, and probably the final tip that is going to suck the most, and that is time. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where we can get access to information almost instantly, and we can absorb that as much as we can. And it's all well and good knowing these things, but until you invest the time to put it into practice and learn for yourself, it means jack shit. So unfortunately, like myself, and it's something that I wish I'd started sooner when it came to this hobby and not chased being into a gimbal and all the other things that are flashy. I consider myself like a magpie. I see something flashy, I want to go get it, and it's just like, stop. I need to learn about lighting. I need to learn about sound and composition of what makes an image visually pleasing. And unfortunately, that takes time, and that takes investment in your own time, and sometimes that can be the most costly. You might not have a lot of time. You might be like myself with a family, and finding time is difficult. So the bonus one is going to be patience. We're not a 6 or 30 man crew where we have a lot of people working for us, where we got a department for the lighting or for the sound. We are, for the most part, a large part of us, we work on our own, and that requires us to learn an awful lot about each individual component which makes up a final image. So I implore you to invest the time in yourself to learn this right, like I'm trying to do myself. And it's slow, but you'll get there, and we'll all get there. I'll get there, I hope. Fingers crossed. So that is it. Those are my 5 tips. They are not glamorous. They are not new equipment. Well, lighting could be new equipment, depends on how much you invest, but that's another ball game. But what I'm trying to say is that you need to learn in principles, and the biggest cost is time. So thank you for sticking around. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.